GreyGray, Telltale.
Check it.
"Stop there," he shouted, running after the mad woman. "You stupid! Hey!" But her feet are fast. You know how they say opposites attract? Well, let me tell you about the time I fell head over heels for someone who was literally on the opposite side of the law from me. I'm Detective Jake Sullivan, 15 years on the force, and I thought I'd seen everything. Drug dealers, murderers, bank robbers, the whole criminal buffet. But I'd never encountered anyone quite like Sophia Jackson. The first time I met her, she was pretending to be a grieving widow collecting donations for her late husband's funeral. Problem was, her late husband was very much alive and running a hot dog stand 3 blocks away. Also, she was wearing a wedding ring that still had the price tag tucked under the band. When I approached her with my badge out, ready to arrest her for fraud, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This terrible woman has been impersonating me and stealing money from innocent people." I kid you not, she tried to get me to arrest herself. The audacity was both infuriating and impressive. However, before I go on about our uncanny encounter, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. That is how I get the bad guys in jail. Sophia was about 5'6", with these expressive dark eyes that could probably convince you the sky was green if she put her mind to it. She had this way of talking with her hands that made everything seem more dramatic, and a smile that could disarm a bomb squad. But she was also a con artist, a really, really good one. Over the next 6 months, I arrested Sophia Jackson no fewer than 18 times. Each arrest was more ridiculous than the last. There was the time she convinced half of downtown Manhattan that she was a foreign princess whose royal jewels had been stolen, and she needed small donations to hire a private investigator. She'd set up this elaborate booth with fake newspaper clippings and everything. Then there was the dating app scam where she created 5 different profiles with 5 different personalities. She wasn't even trying to get money, she just wanted free dinners at expensive restaurants. When I caught her having 3 different dates in the same evening at the same hotel, she claimed she was conducting social research. My personal favorite was when she started a fake charity for left-handed people. "Lefties need rights too," was her slogan. She raised $3,000 before someone reported her to the police. When I asked her why left-handed people specifically, she said, "Well, someone has to think about them." Ugh. The thing about arresting the same person 18 times is that you start to get to know them. During those long car rides to the station, Sophia would tell me about her childhood, her dreams, her philosophy on life. She grew up in foster care, bounced between homes, learned early that charm and quick thinking were better survival tools than trusting people. She wasn't stealing because she was greedy, she was stealing because she was brilliant and bored and had never learned how to use her talents legally. Every con was like a puzzle to her, a way to prove she was smarter than everyone else. And honestly, she usually was. By the 4th arrest, I started looking forward to our conversations. By the 10th, I was actually disappointed when other officers handled her cases. By the 18th, I realized I was in serious trouble. The moment I knew I was completely gone for her was during what she later called the Great Taxi Incident. Sophia had convinced a bunch of tourists that she was an undercover taxi inspector, and they needed to pay her an inspection fee to make sure their taxi was safe. She'd actually created fake credentials and everything. The tourists were thanking her for keeping them safe while handing over their money. When I showed up to arrest her, she saw me coming and did something I'll never forget. Instead of running or trying to talk her way out of it, she walked straight up to me, handed me the money she'd collected, and said, "I was just keeping this safe for you, Officer Sullivan." These nice people wanted to make a donation to the police benevolent fund. She turned a con into a charitable donation and made me look like a hero in front of a crowd of tourists. I was so stunned that I just stood there while everyone applauded. But then she winked at me, and I knew she'd done it on purpose. She'd seen me coming and found a way to turn her con into something that would make me look good instead of putting her in handcuffs. That's when I realized Sophia Jackson wasn't just a con artist. She was someone who cared enough about me to blow her own scam rather than embarrass me in public. The 9th time I arrested her, I did something completely unprofessional. I asked her out. We were sitting in the police station. She was waiting to be processed, and I just blurted out, "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Somewhere that doesn't involve you scamming the waitstaff." She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Then she started laughing, not mean laughter, but this delighted giggle like I'd just told her the best joke she'd ever heard. She said, "Yes, but only if I promised not to arrest her during the meal." Our first date was at this little Italian place in Little Italy. I spent the entire evening waiting for her to somehow con the restaurant or the other diners, but she was completely legitimate. She paid for her own meal, tipped appropriately, and didn't try to convince anyone she was the secret daughter of the restaurant owner. It was the most normal evening of my life, and somehow the most magical. We talked about everything except crime. She told me about her love of old movies, how she taught herself to speak 6 languages by watching foreign films, how she'd always wanted to learn to paint but never had the patience. I told her about growing up in a family of cops, about why I became a detective, about my secret dream of writing a novel someday. At the end of the night, when I walked her to her apartment, she asked if I was going to arrest her the next time she pulled a con. I told her I hoped there wouldn't be a next time. She smiled sadly and said, "Jake, I'm really good at exactly one thing, and it happens to be illegal. I don't know how to be anything else." That's when I realized that Sophia didn't just need to be caught, she needed to be saved. From herself, from her past, from the belief that she was only good at taking advantage of people. For the next few months, we had this weird relationship where I was simultaneously dating her and trying to keep her from committing crimes. I'd take her to museums, hoping to channel her love of storytelling into something legal. I'd bring her books about careers that used her skills: marketing, psychology, theater. But old habits die hard. I'd get calls from other precincts about cons that had Sophia's signature creativity, and I'd have to track her down and convince her to return whatever she'd taken. The breaking point came when she tried to sell the Brooklyn Bridge to a group of German tourists. Not metaphorically, she literally set up a fake real estate office and tried to convince them she was authorized to sell municipal landmarks. When I found her, she was in the middle of explaining the bridge's maintenance requirements to a very confused businessman who was trying to figure out how to ship a bridge back to Munich. This time, I couldn't just make her give the money back and apologize. This was major fraud involving foreign nationals, and my captain was breathing down my neck about this mysterious con artist who kept slipping through our fingers. I had to arrest her for real, not just overnight processing, but actual charges, actual court date, actual consequences. Sophia didn't seem surprised. As I read her rights, she just nodded and said, "I was wondering when this would happen." The trial was 3 months later. Sophia had a public defender who was about as sharp as a bowling ball, and the prosecutor was pushing for the maximum sentence. I testified as the arresting officer, trying to be professional while my heart was breaking. But then Sophia did something typical for her. She fired her lawyer and decided to represent herself. Her defense strategy was to confess to everything and then explain, in detail, how each con had actually made people's lives better. The tourists who bought the Brooklyn Bridge, they got a full refund plus a free tour of the city and a story they'd tell for the rest of their lives. The people who donated to fake charities, their money was donated to real charities that helped the same causes. She turned her sentencing hearing into a one-woman show about the unexpected benefits of creative crime. The judge was not amused, but I could see the jury trying not to smile. Sophia got 18 months in minimum security prison. The day she was sentenced, she found me in the courthouse hallway and handed me a letter. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever written to me. She thanked me for seeing her as more than just a criminal, for believing she could be better. She promised to use her time in prison to figure out how to be the person I believed she could be. I visited her every week. We'd sit in the prison visiting room, and she'd tell me about the classes she was taking: business ethics, nonprofit management, creative writing. She'd started tutoring other inmates in English and helping them write letters to their families. For the first time in her life, Sophia was using her talents to help people instead of taking advantage of them. She got out in 14 months for good behavior. I was waiting for her at the prison gates with a bouquet of flowers and a job offer. My cousin ran a nonprofit that helped former inmates reintegrate into society, and they needed someone who understood the criminal mindset but could also connect with people who felt like the system had given up on them. Sophia was perfect for it. She could spot a con from a mile away, but she also knew what it felt like to believe you had no other options. She became their best counselor, helping dozens of people find legal ways to use their skills. Then, I fell hard in love with her. I know, don't blame me, she stole my heart. 2 months later, I proposed to her in the same spot where I'd first arrested her. She said yes, but only after making sure I wasn't wearing a wire. Our wedding was the most eclectic guest list in New York history, half cops, half former criminals. All people who'd learned that sometimes the best love stories come from the most unlikely places. Sophia still has a tendency to bend rules, but now she does it to help people navigate bureaucracy or find loopholes that benefit the underprivileged. She's turned her con artist skills into a superpower for good. And me. I learned that sometimes the best way to fight crime isn't just to arrest criminals, it's to help them rehabilitate, to hold them accountable, to understand them enough to help them find a better way. Though I have to admit, married life with a former con artist is never boring. Last week, she convinced our mortgage company to lower our interest rate by 3 points just by being charming on the phone. Some skills never go out of style.